Welcome once again to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett along with Kent Meyers. We're here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues, and we welcome back an old friend.
Yeah, this is a particularly fun show to have Dewey Bartlett Jr. back again on our show and tell us about what's going on in his world, and particularly in the oil and gas industry. Lots going on there, and nobody knows it better than Dewey.
And few can articulate it better than Dewey Bartlett.
That's right.
So we're going to learn, again, what's going on in the oil and gas business and anything else that Dewey wants to share today on The Verdict.
Yeah, it's his show.
We'll be right back.
When I went over the first time was the USS Kearsarge, it was carrier. And the second one went around the world on USS Hornet. My name is Eugene Paler. I'm a Navy veteran of the United States Navy, and I am Chickasaw. It's really a good experience because you get to see how other people live. And I've never been to a country I'd trade for this United States of America. So that kind of puts a tear in my eye. I grew up here in this country. I grew up in Oklahoma. It gives you a pride in the United States of America. If somebody needs something, you know, you'd go help them. It's a pretty good country. We're just a top-notch country, and the people are top-notch people.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofanation.com.
We want to reach out to every veteran we can in Oklahoma. There's somewhere around 340,000 veterans here in Oklahoma, and half of those are still unaware of the benefits or don't know how to go about getting them.
We help guide the veterans through the VA system. It's a giant maze, and we kind of help guide them through that maze. So our job is to try to help the veterans get everything that they're legally entitled to. There's just a special place in my heart for our Vietnam veterans and our World War II veterans, as well as any veteran, and that's why I do the job.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today, as we indicated in the open, we're really pleased to have Dewey Bartlett Jr. join us again. Dewey is the president of Keener Oil. He did his undergraduate work at Regis College, got a master's in business administration at Southern Methodist University, was a city councilor in Tulsa for a number of years before he decided to run for mayor, and in 2009 he was elected mayor of Tulsa and served for 2 terms. He's since retired from that activity, and in the past, and still some today, he has been involved in the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, the GRDA, the Oklahoma Energy Resources Board, and many other organizations, always doing well for someone else. And Dewey, we really glad to have a #1 citizen join us today. We're really proud of what you do.
Well, thank you very much. I'm real proud of what we've been able to do and been associated with. It's really been a fun ride so far.
I know you've frequently been a spokesperson for the oil and gas business. What are the current trends? What do people need to know if they haven't been paying attention?
Well, several things really. Today is interesting because on the way over here I heard that a torpedo or some kind of a device had hit a super tanker in the Gulf of Mexico. And I've always said that watch what happens in the Gulf of Arabia. I'm sorry, I said Mexico, not Mexico. That super tankers, once they start getting hit by some kind of a device, then the price of oil is going to smoke up pretty quickly, because the insurance companies aren't going to want to insure those loads because of potential terrorist activity. Wow. So it happened today. So that'll reflect in the price of oil. So anyway, people need to pay attention to that. In Oklahoma, we've had, very fortunately, about 15 years ago, an activity started where horizontal drilling and the completion by a technique called horizontal fracking became a new process of getting oil and gas out of the ground. It's been extremely successful, which is great for the state of Oklahoma and all the people it employs. But there has been some problems as of late with the vertical well operators, those old conventional wells or new conventional wells that are drilled vertically, period. And the fracking technique that is used by the horizontal operators can be extremely invasive into those into those vertical wells, to the point where it damages them or even destroys them. We have evidence of several hundred that have had that as a problem. As of late, many of the horizontal wells that are in existence are now also being damaged by neighboring horizontal wells that have been drilled and vertically, horizontally fracked. So it's a problem, and the Corporation Commission and others, the legislature has been kind of accepting of the problem, or didn't really quite understand that the significance of the problem and what it does affect. It affects private property rights, it affects environmental concerns, all these type of things. So the legislature is going to be very involved with this. They're going to have to be, because they're going to have to make some decisions on how to set liability, how to understand private property rights, that if I have a vertical well or a horizontal well that's been negatively impacted by somebody else, it's not fair if I have to pay for it, that type of activity. So there's a lot of things going on.
Are other states ahead of us or behind us in trying to figure this out? I mean, we can't be the only ones that are dealing with it.
Most of the other states do not have as many wells drilled within the state that Oklahoma does, with the exception of someplace like Texas. Texas, I have not heard of this becoming a problem, because it mainly is the type of horizontal wells that are occurring are usually not in the neighborhood of where vertical wells are located. If all this activity occurs out in the middle of nowhere, so to speak.
In West Texas.
In West Texas, exactly. Or eastern New Mexico. I mean, it's very desolate out there. And in those areas, well, then it does not become a problem, because all elements of the problem don't exist there. But in Oklahoma, it definitely does.
Is the problem one of this horizontal well is capturing the oil that I've had located and put a vertical well down to capture? I mean, or is it a problem of, when you say they're destroying the wells or damaging the wells, are they actually doing some physical kind of damage to them?
Actually, both problems, Kent. Both problems. Sometimes the horizontal well is drilled very close to where an existing vertical well has been pumping oil or natural gas out of the ground literally for decades. And because of a pressure differential, that a horizontal well, when they do their frac, the frac has a tendency to go to where the low pressure is located, and they will have a tendency to take oil away from that particular well that I might have an oil and gas lease upon legally, and have had for several decades, and suddenly the oil that I used to produce is being taken somewhere else. That's a problem, and it's not fair, and that's where private property rights enter into this discussion in a very, very real way.
The oil and gas industry is just becoming more efficient all the time, really becoming a technology industry as much as anything else.
Absolutely.
And so what you see is these large oil and gas companies that have kind of been a staple in the state of Oklahoma and offered corporate headquarters for years are trimming down. It just doesn't take nearly as many people to run the business as it used to. And that will trickle down to the number of people who enter universities that want to seek a career in oil and gas.
Exactly.
What types of oil and gas degrees do you think are the most viable going forward? In other words, should someone still want to be a geologist? Should someone still want to get a land management degree? What degrees do you think are going to be viable going forward?
Well, that's a great question, Mick. It really is. But it really is. And you've seen the University of Tulsa react now to suddenly some of their students aren't quite doing the same thing that had been done traditionally as far as their interests go. I think there is definitely a need for geologists. There's definitely a need for engineers, definitely a need for very smart computer programming types that understand all the technologies that are now either available or are being created. The geologists are necessary not only for the traditional use to find oil and natural gas, because there still is a very strong need for vertical wells to be drilled in Oklahoma. The horizontal wells are extremely expensive, are very efficient in pulling oil and natural gas out of the ground, but in some cases they might not pay back quite as well as a vertical well will do so. So some of those wells, the vertical wells, still need to be drilled, still need good geologists, good petroleum engineering, et cetera. But the geologists also are necessary to understand the stratigraphy when there's a discussion about earthquakes, or there's a discussion about environmental concerns. Subsurface geology is very, very necessary for that type of discussion. The petroleum engineering is necessary as well to understand the reservoir characteristics of the type of formations that the horizontal wells are producing from, and then knowing how that might affect a neighboring well, whether or not that's a neighboring horizontal well or a neighboring vertical well. So I think those are still very, very viable career choices that a student can make, not only from Oklahoma or from Texas, et cetera, but also from some of the countries that are actively involved with oil and gas, Saudi Arabia, China, et cetera. So it's a worldwide situation, and TU is normally, and OU and OSU as well, they've reacted very positively to this. They might have to make a few adjustments, a few changes, but generally I think those are still good career choices.
Just from the standpoint of sheer numbers of wells being drilled, are most of them, or more of them being typical vertical wells, or more of them being horizontal nowadays?
Most of the wells in Oklahoma, Kent, are vertical wells, number-wise. However, most of the wells being drilled these days are horizontally drilled. So they probably drill 60 to 75, 80% of the wells are drilled horizontally in Oklahoma now. But they're still vertical wells.
Notwithstanding the fact that it's more costly to do so.
Exactly. They're very, very expensive. Multitude of millions of dollars just to drill, and a similar number to complete. It's very expensive. But they also can be very prolific. But they can also be damaging. So there's a lot of concern that led us, vertical well operators, to form a new organization a few years ago, because we felt that the former organization that we were all active in, the OIPA, was not as well at compromising all parties concerned. And so we felt the need to form a new organization, which we did. We now have 500 members, and many of the board members that were on the OIPA board has left that group to join ours, and we've become very viable. We're new, but we certainly understand the process. We're all experienced, and we all want to get along, but we felt that having a new organization, that would be better for all parties concerned.
Let me jump in and get us to a break. Our guest is Dewey Bartlett. As you've heard, he's an executive in the oil and gas industry, also served as the mayor of Tulsa. We'll be right back. More from Dewey after this.
OU Law has a history and heritage that are unparalleled. At the University of Oklahoma College of Law, we empower our students to pursue the career of their dreams. We have the highest U.S. News ranking ever achieved by an Oklahoma law school. We are the first law school in the country to launch a college-wide digital initiative. And this year, our competition teams rank number 2 in the nation. OU Law, generations of excellence, limitless possibilities.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Our guest today is Dewey Bartlett.
Dewey, many of us remember the term wildcatter and know generally what it means, and it sometimes has a good connotation, sometimes not quite so good, depending on whether you hit a well or not. But what is the status of a wildcatter today in Oklahoma? First of all, tell us what you think that term means, and then tell us what is the status.
Well, wildcatter, the traditional term would be somebody that has a great idea, they think, to go out and drill a well someplace and in the middle of nowhere without a whole lot of information and try to find oil or natural gas, primarily oil. This kind of traditional, back at the 50, 75 years ago kind of way. Today, wildcatter is not that type of activity, although there still are those that do drill vertical wells that believe that they're somewhat risky in what they do, which I think is very true. However, wildcatters today, in the horizontal universe, horizontal drilling is more like farming, in my opinion. That there's huge areas that no matter where drilled, a particular formation will be encountered that does produce oil and natural gas to a degree when given a very, very large frac. So where the wildcatter term would come into that activity is they're very, very costly, and it requires somebody with a lot of deep pockets, a very large company, or a relationship with an equity provider. And so those that are putting all the money in it, they're really the wildcatters now, because it doesn't always work to a degree that pays the investor back to the degree that they would like. So they're taking a huge risk monetarily, but that's the wildcatting side of things in my view.
The two plays I hear about most are the ones in western Oklahoma,
Yes.
I think Kingfisher or Blaine County, that area, and then out in West Texas, in the old Permian Basin.
Yes.
Are those two plays equal as far as cost goes? If a company decides to drill a well, is it about the same expense to drill a well in either place?
I think it's about the same expense to drill the well, but the Permian Basin is much more prolific. It's the formations that they go to are numerous, and they're very, very thick, much thicker than what we encounter in Oklahoma. Oklahomas are still prolific, but not to that degree. The Permian Basin is very, very prolific. It's a very large area, has been producing oil and natural gas for many, many decades. And every time the public will say, well, it's almost come to its end. Somebody drills on a well, finds something else, and boom, they're off to another boom. And so that happens frequently. But Oklahoma, it's extremely expensive. Just to drill a horizontal well is, they go out 8 to 10, 12,000 feet horizontally, $7 or $8 million just to drill it. To complete it and frack it and all that, another $4 or $5 million, and that's before getting 2 gallons of oil back.
Yeah.
So it's a real risk, but they do it because they feel that there's a good, reasonable risk in doing that, and with that one well, and then they feel that they can drill other additional wells on that same platform essentially at less cost and still produce a lot of oil. However, there sometimes occurs where the initial oil took a large amount of the oil out of that area, and when additional wells are drilled, they're not quite as prolific because some of the oil has already been produced that used to be there. So that's a risk.
What does the price today have to be for oil per barrel to make it economically feasible to go search for it?
It varies depending on the type of activity that the company is considering. I believe that a few months ago, when the price of oil was in the mid-60s, that was a decent price. I think companies could then accumulate cash and then use that accumulation of money to drill additional wells without having to borrow or seek outside investors. Today's price of being in the low 50s is, I'd say, maybe break even at best in some cases. Certainly if it gets into the 40s again, that's not going to be a good day. But 50s at least kind of a break even situation, but still not a very good price.
Well, if it's in the 50s, I guess, and all you can do, the best you can hope for is break even, there doesn't seem to be a lot of incentive to do that.
No, and I think we've seen in Oklahoma, drilling rigs are not quite as busy as they used to be, and that's reflective of the prices.
I noticed a report recently that drilling rigs were down like 7 or 8 in Oklahoma, and 3 times that in Texas. Is that the trend, or is it just, can it vary erratically?
I think it's a trend, but it also is, as Mick stated earlier, about how the horizontal wells are such more efficient, where 2 or 3 horizontal wells might have been drilled. Now they're just drilling 1, and still getting roughly the same amount of oil out, but they're only drilling 1 time, and they're not as employing as many people to drill potentially wells 2 and 3. Those aren't being drilled. So the efficiency we're seeing, but we've also seen a lot of layoffs. Some very large companies have had some severe layoffs over the years, and that really reverberates in the local economy big time.
I'd love to get your opinion on the state of Oklahoma's reliance on the oil and gas industry. Your father was governor of this state, so you've been having your eye on, on that side of the ledger for a long, long time. Are we over-reliant on the oil and gas industry? Should we be diversifying?
We should be much more diversified, in my view. Oil and gas, I mean, that pays the bills. It always has been. But we see it every day. What we're talking about now is the price of oil that we do not control. It's controlled by the worldwide production, and that's normally controlled by the OPEC countries. Not quite as much as they used to be, but still, they have control. We have to, in Oklahoma, look at other means of stoking our local economies. In Tulsa, of course, while I was mayor, and I know you did the same thing while you were mayor, you looked at other types of businesses, manufacturing especially. We both know how serious those are when they decide to locate in our communities, what a great day that was. So diversification, I think, is very necessary. Many of our oil and gas related career paths are still good because in some cases they can be segued into other things. In manufacturing, they can make valves for other purposes, or they can make tanks for other purposes. Or if someone were to get involved with alternative energy creation and production, those type of career paths can be used there, especially in engineering and manufacturing. So I think that we still need to focus, in my view, on very strong companies like manufacturing companies. Position I have now at the Tulsa Port Authority, we're now starting to realize that our workforce needs need to be focused on very directly at what is necessary at our port, welding, equipment operation, things such as that. And if we can form a partnership with local high schools and give those students an opportunity for a career path that might not require a college degree, then we've done a great thing. So we're focusing on that. I did that while I was at the end of my mayor's term, my second term. And it's very, very not only productive for those particular companies and those students, but I think it's socially responsible. When we have kids that are graduating from high schools without a career path at all, and they haven't been experienced or really shown another path alternative to going to college, we've really missed an opportunity, and we're not fulfilling our responsibility, in my view, as being good citizens in our state.
All right. Dewey, we've run out of time.
Wow, that was always quick as always. I really always enjoy the opportunity. Really
well, thanks
do.
for coming on the
show.
So
do we, and so do our viewers.
Well, good. Thank you.
Kent and I'll be back with the final word.
It used to be okay in hospitals. It used to be okay in movie theaters. It was okay in classrooms, restaurants, and airplanes. But thanks to a greater understanding of the dangers, that's not okay anymore. So now that we know secondhand smoke causes lifelong health problems, why is it still okay to smoke with children in the car? Bottom line, it's not okay. Let's get serious about protecting kids. Join the fight at stopswithme.com.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
You have children coming from a different lifestyle, different mindset. You have to open your arms and really do what you have to do to have that child become a part of your family. And if it's more patience, that's what you do. Kids got to know they can trust you. And that's what we try to do with these kids.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Our guest was Dewey Bartlett, the former mayor of Tulsa, also an executive in the oil and gas business.
Yes, Dewey has been a pillar of the state and local community in Tulsa here for many, many years and continues to do good work and is such a pleasant fellow to deal with.
Well, he communicates a very difficult subject, the oil and gas industry, that is so important to this state's economy. Yeah. And he's been a spokesperson for the industry for quite some time. We really appreciate him coming on the show. You can get more information about his particular oil company at his website, KeenerOil.com. That's KeenerOil.com. And we have a website. We'd love to see you log on and tell us about a guest you'd like to see or a subject that you'd like to see discussed on a future edition of The Verdict. That's going to do it, though, for this week's show. For Kent, I'm Mick Cornett. We will see you next week right here on another edition of The Verdict.